Do you know pandas? No, not the small red ones, the big black and white ones. Yeah. Why are all of those considered Chinese state property? Well, not all of them. As for all things, there's an asterisk here, but we'll talk about that later. You may now look at me and say, are you stupid? Of course all pandas are in China, if their habitat is only a few mountain ranges in south-central China, in these three provinces. That's like if I asked, why are there no pigs in the Atlantic Ocean? Oh, there are? Forget my example, but you know what I meant. Well, yes, natively pandas are only found in China. But what about the pandas in zoos all around the world? Why do they belong to China? That's because something called panda diplomacy, a practice of sending pandas from China to other countries as a tool of diplomacy. But you disregard human rights, and privacy is a word outside of your vocabulary. But look at this adorable panda. Isn't he the best? So cute. Aww. What were we talking about again? The first act of modern panda diplomacy was in 1941, when two pandas were gifted to the USA as a dramatic thank you for receiving help against the Japanese. Although this had not been the first time for pandas to leave China, now the Chinese realized their potential and the diplomatic career of the pandas began. After the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, pandas were reserved for socialist allies, such as the USSR or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Therefore, it was near impossible for Western countries to get their hands on one. But in 1958, an Austrian animal dealer secured a panda for the cheap price of 3 giraffes, 2 rhinoceroses, 2 hippos and 2 zebras. The panda he got was called Chi-Chi and found a new home in the London Zoo. The first pandas, post-PRC, to enter US soil arrived after a visit of President Nixon in 1972, when Mao Zedong promised to send 2 pandas to an American zoo. In exchange, Nixon gifted 2 musk oxen to the Chinese. This happy trading and gifting of pandas continued until 1984, when China's leader Deng Xiaoping modified the policy, such that subsequent pandas would be leased instead of gifted, basically being the pioneer of the now usual subscription model. But instead of $10 per month, you paid 50,000. This practice was again modified in 1991 in favor of long-term leases, up to $1 million per year per panda. But that was not all. All cubs born during the lease were considered property of the Chinese government, and you were not allowed to collect any genetic samples. Maybe out of fear of foreign cheap knockoff pandas that would lessen the value of the Chinese original. What a way to flip the script. To these subscription costs come the costs of sustaining a panda. Pandas are really picky. Their food of choice is bamboo, which contains only little nutrients, forcing them to eat 12 to 38 kilograms every day. This adds up to another 100,000 macaroons a year. And don't think that you can keep your panda as long as you don't violate your contract and pay your bills. No, no, no. If, for example, your president were to, hypothetically, visit a, by the Chinese government, not so well regarded figure, such as, theoretically speaking, the Dalai Lama, there's no guarantee that your pandas are allowed to stay. All hypothetically, of course. On the other side of this coin, if you happen to say something with which the Chinese government agrees with, you could happen to find yourself in the possession of a loaned panda. For example, if you say Taiwan is not a country, but instead a legitimate part of China, and the CCP is the only rightful government of this China, you might get a panda. You just need to look out for the costs of such a panda. Oh no, you can't afford it? Globally, there are approximately 2,000 wild and 500 captive pandas. In 2019, there were 27 zoos in 21 countries outside of China who hosted giant pandas. Remember that asterisk from earlier? Pandas who are not owned by the Chinese government. There are only 2 places in the world where you can see such pandas. The first is a panda in Mexico's Chapultepec Zoo, who is a second-generation Mexican-born panda, tracing her heritage to a time before the "all cubs belong to China" rule. The second is one panda in Taipei Zoo, who was part of the cultural exchange program, where 2 pandas, one of them died in 2022, were gifted to Taiwan. This move was controversial because the names of the 2 pandas together mean reunion, which perfectly matches Beijing's goal of bringing Taiwan back into its fold. Dear visitors, we want to remind you that the area of the zoo closes in 15 minutes. Please proceed to the exits. We thank you for your visit and wish you a pleasant evening. Okay, time for me to come to an end. Sleep well, and the next time you see one of these cute animals, think about who is really looking back at you with those deep black eyes.